Perfect. Hello, everyone. We have a special show today in Frecuencia Deportiva, and don't forget we have to give a big shout out for our sponsor, Central Tech. Don't forget you can get in touch with them at 647-385-4797, and they are located at 1104 Wilson Avenue. Perfect. We're going to talk about hockey, guys, today, and we have a great guest. I have Eduardo on my right side, and I have the one and only. Come on with your introduction, the one and only.
You can call me the Schwartz. That's what they call me at barnburner.ca, except Norm. Norm calls me by my first name. He's the only guy in broadcasting that gets away with that. So you can go the Schwartz, Schwartzy, but people don't usually use my first name when it comes to broadcasting, so we'll stick with that. It's nice to join you guys, and thank you for speaking English on my behalf, because if you spoke in Spanish the whole time, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Sure, yeah, no, absolutely.
Guys, it's a special show that we're making today, and today we're gonna talk about hockey. What's happening today is a big day that everybody's talking on town, and that's what we got. One of the best. We got the shirts.
It's nice that you flatter me. You flatter me. I'm turning red, and I haven't even eaten anything spicy. Jeez, guys, thank you for an introduction like that. Thank you.
So, Schwartz, we were talking Maple Leafs. We were talking Mike Babcock, Kyle Dubas.
We were talking about that off camera. That's right, because it's a big deal right now. Missing out on the second round of the playoffs again.
Yeah, well, it's like I told you off camera. Basically, my analytical mind tells me blame the coach because of what lack of dynamics and strategy that we saw in that first round of the playoffs. They had it at their fingertips because they had a huge lead, and then they dropped it.
They did, and you know what? It's easy to blame Mike Babcock because you're right. You were saying he juggled lines. Where's the chemistry? But we also got to remember that Freddie Anderson did not have a very good Game 7. He is a very good goaltender,
and it happened for the second time in a row, huh?
Yeah, this is. If you don't keep track of hockey very much, the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs have a very long and storied history. One of the longest rivalries in professional sports. And the Boston Bruins have been an amazing hockey team for quite some time. And a really solid lineup. Some would say they have the best first line in hockey between Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, and David Pastrnak. So they've got an excellent lineup. And this year, Tuukka Rask in goal was dynamite in the playoffs.
He was the best.
And absolutely. He was the best goaltender, hands down, in the playoffs this year. And what a lot of people fail to recognize is that the Stanley Cup, first of all, is the hardest trophy to win in professional sports. You've got to win 16 games. You got to go through... You don't sweep every game. You just don't. And it's one of the most punishing experiences in professional sports. So... while I can understand that, Boston is like their kryptonite. Leafs could have had Superman, and I don't think it would have mattered. But even think about this: Mitch Marner, known for playing well both ends of the ice, good defensive play, but a setup man for Tavares. Tavares didn't score a bunch of goals. Neither did Marner. Marner made a spectacular play at the blue line for the Leafs to win a big game and everything, hold the lead. But after that, where was he on the score sheet? Where was Matthews on the score sheet? And oh wait. Nazem Kadri was up in the press box, and that, to me, was a big deal.
And we'll go to that topic because Nazem Kadri, in 2 consecutive seasons, has now been in the press box more often than he has been in the
for the same reason. For the exact same. It's not even like he did something stupid in a different way. He did the same thing twice.
So here we comes to the question. We have Nick Petan. Nick Petan was brought from Winnipeg to Toronto.
That's right. That's the player you were thinking of. That's right.
In order to fill that void that we had in the third line. Because they said that our third line is not what it has to be, and this and that. And I still don't think that that's the issue. I think it's more the issue of that they have 3 good centermen that, or I would say 3 or 4, because now with Nylander also we can we
won't talk about Willie. We're not going to talk about Willie. We can do a whole show about Willie. So we'll stray away from William Nylander for now.
So we have four great centermen that can fulfill, but they want to keep them together in the same line because they think that there's a chemistry there.
Well, with Nazem Kadri, you got to remember, up until last year, actually, he was the number 2 center on the Leafs.
Yep.
He had back-to-back seasons with 30 goals. And that is a tough thing to do in today's National Hockey League. And you also have to remember, he would go stretches of more than 10 games without a goal. But he's also a fairly defensive, responsible defensive centerman. I'm not saying he's going to win the Selke Award. I'm not saying he's Patrice Bergeron of the Boston Bruins. But he's a proven talent up the middle, and that's hard to find. And then when you get a guy like Tavares, who can play center, what do you do with a guy like him? And Kadri took it well at the beginning of the season. Like, look, I don't think there's anybody in their right mind that's going to argue who the better overall hockey player is. Jonathan Tavares is arguably the most underrated hockey player in the league. But he took his role, went to the third line, acted more as a shutdown guy. But in the playoffs, Nazem, where's your head?
Yep.
Just taking a stupid penalty, a misconduct.
But it started before the playoffs, though. It started, I would say, around April, May that deadline, that Kadri just dropped off the face of the earth.
It happened. I mean, look, players hit slumps, and it's at the worst times. And one of the things, and I'm glad you mentioned it like that, because it's an easy way to explain what happened in the Cup final. A lot of times, and this isn't just with hockey, right? It happens in football, so football and football, soccer. Sorry, I got to say it for the distinction. When you get to the playoffs, and you're riding that wave, and you hit your peak early, then come the playoffs and you dip. That happens in all sports.
Yeah, it does.
Right? You don't want to peak at that time where you know, I need to peak like by mid-first round. You don't want to peak at a time where you're going to lose that kind of momentum. Right? I mean, St. Louis, obviously, though, they rode that momentum longer than I think anybody. Winning the Stanley Cup the way they did. It was hard to see the Leafs lose because I make no bones about it. I love the Montreal Canadiens. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, but I love hockey more than I love any particular hockey team. And so I've really loved what the Maple Leafs have done. As an organization, they've done a lot of smart things. They've been patient. They haven't made any really stupid trades, even though there's pressure from Toronto media and fans all the time about it. They stood their ground. And that's something I want to say is akin to the Shanahan plan. That's what everybody talks about. Brendan Shanahan was renewed as the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Right? So he's got to be doing something right. And Shanahan set out his mandate. And he had Lou Lamoriello, potential general manager of the year. When we get to discuss, maybe we'll talk about that next, is the NHL awards. But, you know, Lou Lamoriello helped build this franchise into what it is now, and then handed over the reins to Kyle Dubas. And we were also talking about that off air. Was there friction between Babcock and Dubas? Well, I mean, Kyle Dubas, yes, is the general manager, but Mike Babcock has to say to him, look, I need this asset. And Dubas' job is also to fill that void that Babcock is saying, look, I need that. Now, they did get Jake Muzzin on defense, and it was a big deal. Toronto Maple Leafs had a solid core. We don't know what's going to happen with Jake Gardiner. He is an unrestricted free agent, and he's a player that, if you're unfamiliar, a lot of people talk poorly about him, and we can talk about him all show if we want.
It's true, especially those...
Next Wednesday is the limit for the Leafs to get Jake back into this team.
Yeah, it's
no, they will lose him.
Free agency is going to hit, and the NHL draft is coming up soon too. We were going to have a guest join us, but unfortunately there was a conflict, and he's not able to make it. So I'm not sure how much we'll touch on the draft because that's his area of expertise. But having said that, again, what are you going to do? You're going to free up cap space because Jake Gardiner's going to, if he goes elsewhere, he's definitely going to get anywhere between $7 to $8 million a year. Toronto Maple Leafs fans probably just heard me say that and jump out of their seat. But you got to understand, you look at that guy's statistics. You look at how he performs on the penalty kill and how he plays.
We saw it at the beginning of the season. I mean, Jake was out and the defense went down.
And when he was injured in the playoffs, when he wasn't playing at 100%. So I'm glad you mentioned that and picked that up because a lot of people really, let's relate to PK Subban, okay?
Oh, yeah,
Me being
for
a
sure.
Montreal Canadiens fan, all those first few years, there was a lot of potential. But he'd make big mistakes at the worst time, and everybody was all over him about it. All over him. Trade Subban, trade Subban.
But then they got so upset when he was.
And then when he
left.
does get traded, they get upset because he was already establishing himself. But again, that's another topic we can talk about.
Another show.
Ultimately, it boils down to people having short memories and then hearing, and I'm going to say this on camera, I'm going to look directly at the camera. Never pay attention to
With
Steve
media.
Simmons, specifically.
Wow.
Never. Ever. I'm going on record saying this. There are going to be thousands of people who will watch this. If you pick up a Toronto Star or Sun or wherever he's talking, if he's on TV, change the channel. If you see his name in a column, don't read it.
Read it.
Don't read it. If you pick up your hockey information from Steve Simmons, you may as well be drinking out of the toilet for when you're going to drink water. He is horrible. He is the worst analyst. There's no player in the NHL that will talk to him, interview with him. He has zero reputation or credibility to be talking about the game the way he does. He has no business reporting on hockey. None. Okay, I've been saying that for years. Saying that for years. Jake Gardiner, losing him is going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now. It's going to be a big deal.
Well, but let's look back also because we have Nikita Zaitsev.
Oh, good riddance. Gone. Gone.
Yeah.
Get rid of him. Last year in the playoffs,
and Connor
and
Brown.
this year in the playoffs, he was better. I'm sorry. I should give Zaitsev a little more credit. But last year, when everybody was all over Jake Gardiner, I'm watching that game going, Nikita Zaitsev's busy in the corner talking to some lady or something because he's missing his assignment in front of the net. Like, I coach hockey for a living. I coach goaltenders for a living. But I know what the skills coaches teach. I know what those guys, those skill development coaches teach. And if your defensive partner's in the corner covering his man, guess where you should be? In front of the net. And where was Nikita Zaitsev? Nowhere to be seen. Nowhere. So, you know, I place more blame, at least last season, not this current past season, but the season before, on Zaitsev. He improved his game, but now he's actually requesting a trade out of Toronto.
What do you think happened?
What do I think that happened? That he wants a trade? I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know the guy personally, but you know what? Between him and Gardiner probably going, we could see enough salary cap space for that Mitch Marner fella signing up, but rumor has it, Mitch doesn't want that 8-year, $11 million a season deal right now, and that's been offered to him.
Wow.
What do you guys think of that? I mean,
Well,
hometown boy, one of the
yeah,
best
but-
players on the team.
yeah, but we have to think of he's looking at what Matthews got, what Tavares got, and he has put his time in. I mean, if you think
But I'm
about
telling-
what Marner has done in the past 3 seasons.
But they offered him max deal. This is
Yeah.
the biggest deal they can give him under the current collective bargaining agreement and salary cap. But what he's doing, and this is a credit to him, and I think I know where you're going here, Edward. I don't mean to cut you off, but this is a smart play. I don't like it because they're giving him the biggest deal they can give him right now. 8 years, $11 million. That's a bigger deal than Matthews, who's at 5 years, around $9 million. He's got a bridge deal, right?
So
What they
maybe-
want to do is get him his agent's going, let's get a shorter term deal
5
for
years.
a little less money, so that way when the salary cap goes up, we're really going to be able to cash in way more than $11 million. That's what they're banking on. So I hear you what you're saying, at least where I think you're going with this,
Yeah.
right? He wants to bank, I don't blame him.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, you put 3 people in the head of, in the eyeballs of what the Maple Leafs have. The 3 cornerstones of that organization right now are Tavares, Marner, and Matthews.
Yeah.
And he wants to be.
And Morgan Riley, let's not leave their star defenseman out of
Yeah,
this
well,
either. Morgan Riley, who is not an unrestricted free agent yet.
It's true. It's true.
And then you have Connor Brown, and then you have other players that, well, Anderson, his contract is coming up soon.
2 years. You're very lucky. 2 more years. He's at $5 million a year right now, and he's going to get a big raise once that's up. Connor Brown, in the scheme of things, so he's not going to be demanding a big salary cap hit. He's still a young enough guy. He's not a 30, 40 goal scorer. Like he's going to play third line minutes. That's the one that you should probably be worried about. Kasperi Kapanen was the guy that the Toronto Maple Leafs traded for when they sent Phil Kessel to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Kasperi Kapanen had an outstanding year, and arguably made William Nylander expendable. So it's going to be very difficult to see how they're going to try and keep a guy like Kapanen.
You think they're going to train Nylander?
They should. They should. I mean, I don't know who's going to take him for the performance he had this season, and the contract that he signed, around $7 million a year.
For doing
That's
nothing.
for doing nothing. There was a point in time where Tuukka Rask had more points than him for a long stretch.
Well,
True.
yeah, but let's give benefit of the doubt because he was out till December.
But he chose to be.
Yeah.
He
Well-
chose to be, and he played in Europe. It's not like he said he was sitting at home eating Lay's potato chips with
Yeah.
Mark Messier. He was playing. He was playing pro hockey. He was playing pro hockey in Europe. I can't give him the pass.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
It doesn't
he
matter.
wasn't playing
It's-
NHL hockey.
I'll flip this to you then.
Yeah.
I'll flip this to you. Because
Wow.
Austin Matthews played in Europe before he joined the National Hockey League. And Austin Matthews, I think he made a pretty decent transition, that young
Yeah,
fella.
it's true.
Most players, when they're conditioning themselves, they don't have a whole lot of choice.
Yeah, but
They got to go to Europe.
Yeah, but-
And the Swedish elite leagues, the Finnish elite leagues, that's really good hockey.
Yeah, but you're talking Austin Matthews. Austin Matthews is beyond
Of course he
a
is, but
certain level.
But even still, William Nylander, he was a big point getter in the American Hockey League. I want to say he was the Leafs' leading point getter in the American Hockey League prior to joining the Leafs full time. And I don't want you to sell European professional hockey short, because
No,
of course
I am
he
not
couldn't
doing
play.
that.
No, but it
I
keeps
mean,
the player sharp. It really does. So for him to try and say, well, Europe, this, that, no, you got to be ready. This is your job. So even if you weren't playing, you should have been on the ice every single day, working with a skills coach and busting your ass. So the minute that you are ready to sign that contract and say I'm worth $7 million, you walk
show
out
it.
there and show that you're worth $7 million. There's
Yep.
just no excuse when you're a professional, especially when you go to the second best market in the world, arguably, for hockey. So I do hear what you're saying, but to me, there's just no excuse for a professional to say, "Oh, you know what? I was just playing in Europe. I wasn't ready."
You're telling me maybe Nylander and Nassim Kadri, they'll be gone?
I'd be remiss to say Kadri, but he did make himself a little expendable. You know, when you make stupid decisions like that, and ultimately it ends up potentially costing you a run at the Stanley Cup.
And we do have guys down in the Marlies organization that are ready.
And that's true, very true.
And
Wait a second, Eduardo. How about the best part? How come until now we don't have another assistant coach for Babcock? What's happening there?
What, the coaching staff that's going on right now, they still haven't made their decisions yet. I guess they're trying to formulate things around draft time. I haven't really kept much track of that coaching situation. I was busy watching the Stanley Cup. And also, we haven't even really touched on the NHL awards yet. I mean, we've awarded the greatest trophy in the history of sports. I'm biased. We haven't even talked about the awards yet, and those were last night, fellas.
We're gonna talk about now.
We talked a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs, and that's easy to do, by the way, because we're here in Toronto.
Yep.
Right? And even if you're not as familiar, because I know that, hey, look, hockey isn't exactly the biggest sport in Spain or Mexico or in the Spanish-speaking community. So I'm glad that you brought me on here, because I try and make it a little easier for people to, really enjoy hockey.
Yeah.
And welcome people into the discussion about hockey.
So what we do, let's talk about business then. So what you think about yesterday? Give us some impressions. Who you think might end up winning? Who you think they miscrew it? You mentioned the coach for New York Islander. Barry.
Yes, Barry Trotz. So first and foremost, let's get this out of the way.
Mhm.
The voting for these awards is done by the end of the regular season. So right away, don't think about the Stanley Cup when it
yeah.
comes to the awards. Don't think about game one, nothing. The Stanley Cup is an entity unto itself. Players don't even get paid during the playoffs. Their contract is for the regular season. That's it. They
Wow.
get paid for the regular season.
Wow, I didn't know that part.
So there you go. They don't get a
Nice.
single paycheck during the Stanley. They'll get a bonus if they win, but they don't get paid. Right? So that's the ultimate prize, and that's separate. Nobody's voting at the last second. Okay, I think that guy should win this, that thing. Okay, there it is. It's ready to go. No, that's done by the time the end of the regular season's over. Right? Between the general managers who vote on the Vezina Award, the broadcasters who vote on Coach of the Year, and then the Professional Hockey Writers Association votes on every other award. On every other award. So they get everything all in here. And so, anyhow, were there any surprises? I mean, you did mention Barry Trotz, and one could argue that Craig Berube, who took over the coaching duties from Mike Yeo in St. Louis, in December, they were the worst team in the NHL, and they go on to win the Stanley Cup. Having said that, though, nobody expected the New York Islanders to make the playoffs. Nobody.
Nobody.
And they lost Jonathan Tavares, a big deal. They had some good young talent. They had reigning Rookie of the Year up until last night in Matthew Barzal, and they had Josh Bailey, some good young talent, but no, and Jordan Eberle, who struggled while he was an Edmonton Oiler, but did pretty well in New York, and he just recently signed an extension with the team. But it's very clear that wherever Barry Trotz goes, everybody buys in. They respect him. So while this wasn't a team that went worst to first, or where John Cooper, who led the Tampa Bay Lightning to, well, a record season, 62 wins. They lost 20 games all year. That's huge.
Yeah.
And to tie the record, 62 wins in a single season, is a big, big deal. But again, Trotz just proves time and again, wherever he goes, there is success to be had.
It makes some magic.
Yeah, he makes magic, and I mean, another surprise that some people thought, you know, Andre Vasilevsky won the Vezina Trophy. Me being a goaltender, I kind of keep a little more track of that, and people argue, well, what about the statistics? Well, there's already the Williams-Jennings Trophy for that, and that did go, by the way, to the New York Islanders, because their goals against average went, well, from worst to the best in the league. So a big congratulations to Robin Lehner, who struggled mightily last year when he was the goaltender for the Buffalo Sabres. And he's an interesting story unto itself, so don't let me forget, because it's actually a really good line to go towards. But, you know, just seeing what they accomplished, seeing what Trotz did, great. Vasilevsky, though, he certainly deserved it. Some people would say, statistically speaking, Robin Lehner was better, and that Ben Bishop of the Dallas Stars was, and that some people even say it could have been any goaltender. Well, a lot of people go, any goaltender could have been on that Tampa team, and they would have won the Vezina. But
how about the goalie from Las Vegas?
Well, Marc-Andre Fleury is a story unto himself, but he didn't overall as a season have the numbers and impact that a guy like Leonard, who turned his entire career around. Now, on that note, by the way, Mitch Korn is known as one of the great goalie coaches in the world, and that's true. As a goalie coach, professionally, that's what I do when I'm not talking on camera. I coach goaltenders for a living. Mitch Korn changed the game. He's a great goalie coach. And so him going...
But did he change his style, like from a butterfly coach to goalie?
The butterfly goaltender, and we can discuss that maybe in a little bit of detail. There's two styles of goaltending, you could say, stand-up, but that died in the 90s. If anything, we're moving towards what's a hybrid approach, where they use terms like puck tracking. If you watch hockey and you're asking about that, that's when the goalie watches the shot from the point of release off the stick right to the body. Right? So if I'm going to catch a puck, it's getting the head tilted down, watching the puck, right to the glove, eye to glove, catching the puck. Right? How you steer your rebounds and how you watch and move, all those incredible things that you do. But part of it is also save selection. You don't have to butterfly every time to make the save. That's when a goalie's going down on the ice. He sees knees on the ice. The luxury NHL goaltenders have, by the way, is that most of them are over 6 feet tall. Over 6'1". I think the average is 6'2". Yep. But when you get guys like Ben Bishop, who's 6'9", to do a butterfly, he's taking up a lot of net, that boy. Andre Vasilevsky, same thing. So, you know, they get away with it. They cheat a little bit sometimes, and they can get away with it. But Vasilevsky most certainly deserved the Vezina Trophy. And Robin Leonard, the guy won something called the Masterton Trophy. And I think this is really important because he battled through mental illness.
Oh, wow.
He battled through mental illness, depression, alcoholism. I mean, there were people who made jokes about Buffalo as a city on that, but quite frankly, jokes aside, you know, we've come to a point in society now where depression and anxiety is very real, and that we understand that you are not weak by saying, I'm having these mental problems, this issues with depression and anxiety. So for him to overcome that, and for him to win that trophy and get on stage and saying, I'm not weak, is a big deal for a lot of young people, players, anybody watching that should watch him, understand what he went through, and to say that was a big, big deal. So good on Robin Leonard for that. That's not a surprise. Good on him.
And people have to understand that the pressure of playing at a high level in sports, having a family to support, is not an easy task. You are away 40 to 60 games away from your family when you are playing at a high level, at a high intensity league. So it's normal that these guys would go through some type of situation, and especially when you
well, and as a goaltender, and even more importantly, as a goaltender, when you bring up
you are responsible.
attention.
You're responsible for the freaking team.
Yeah, in a lot, yes. You're literally called the last line of defense. I mean, it's the same in football, soccer, and in lacrosse or anywhere where there's someone guarding the net. And Jacques Plante, who is one of the greatest goaltenders of all time, said, and I'm paraphrasing, but you don't have too many jobs in this world where 20,000 people boo you after making a mistake.
Yep.
And to do that night in and night out takes a lot of mental strength. And that stress, as you pointed out, is just monumental. Monumental.
I remember and I'm referring to the Leafs because that's my, well, not just the Leafs, you can look at Edmonton with their great goalies of all time.
Grant Fuhr, substance abuse.
Grant Fuhr went through substance abuse because of the level of pressure that he had in top of him. Mike Palmetier had
from the Leafs, the old school Palmetier. That's right.
He had problems also that transpired from that. He was, if I remember correctly, halfway through his career with the Leafs, he had a car accident with intoxication because they had scored 6 goals against him.
It's a big deal. It really is. So when you brought up any upsets, sorry, I got a little choked up there. I'm not crying. I didn't want to burp in the microphone. That would have been very rude, and we're not doing that here on Frequency5FM.com. It's just not going to happen. But anyhow, going back to Leonard, it's just very important. I can't overstate how important it was for him to win that award and get up on stage so you're not weak. And so that's a great message for anyone watching that award ceremony to take away from. And by no means was his victory an upset. I think, in fact, everybody pretty well knew it was his to lose more than anything. And one of the awards, getting back to more of a lighter one, was Coach of the Year. That one was a bit of a surprise because, like we said, John Tortorella. Why did I mention John Tortorella? Because he's one of the most entertaining coaches. John Cooper losing.
He's very funny.
Oh, I love it. We call it the freshly baked tort on the hockey report, which, by the way, is going to be here on Frequency5FM.com through the Barn Burner Radio Network starting in the fall.
Yes.
So we'll have more scheduling information for that. I'm going to be happy to be joining you guys more regularly in the fall and talking hockey. But we're wrapping up the NHL awards, and there's no surprise with that. There was, to me, no real surprise with the Vezina. Some people would have argued the Hart Trophy. The Hart Trophy is the most valuable player to their team. And that was won by Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He already won the Art Ross Trophy. That's for the most points in the season. And that doesn't always happen where you get the most points and you end up being named the Hart Trophy winner. But Edmonton not making the playoffs this year was a big deal. And a lot of people could knock that on McDavid.
They fired the coach.
But almost unfairly. Yeah, they fired the coach. They brought in an even worse coach. Ken Hitchcock was just not a good coach for that team. Ken Hitchcock should not be in the NHL anymore. His shelf life was like 5 years ago. There are times where he's like, he'll win in one season, and then the next season they don't make the playoffs. Yep. That's been his style basically since he won the Cup with Dallas. he gets a short shelf life.
Mhm.
And he won the Cup with Dallas almost 20 years ago, right? So it's a long time. So you don't want to place a lot of blame on McDavid and the lack of success in Edmonton because it's just a disaster from management down. They've now brought in Ken Holland, who did help build the Detroit Red Wings for many years with some great drafting, late-round draft picks, some of the all-time great late-round draft picks, like Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg. And that was under his watch.
Wow.
So there's a lot of talent and scouting that he's very proud of and can say, now, yes, the Detroit Red Wings, they haven't been great the last couple of years, but that's a story for another time. We'll probably talk about that on the Hockey Report more directly. But Kucherov just had an out-of-this-world year, and he signed a big contract with them, and the heart and soul of that team for a long time, Steve Stamkos. And he outdid Stammer by, 20 points. So he really carried that team this year, no doubt. And to see him win the Hart is a big deal. But the other one that's...
Ted Lindsay.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up. The Ted Lindsay Award is the award that, we had said earlier that the general managers vote on the Vezina, the broadcasters vote on Coach of the Year, and the Professional Hockey Writers Association award everybody else. But you're right. There's one other award that isn't given out by those writers and management. It's the Ted Lindsay. It's the Ted Lindsay, formerly the Lester B. Pearson. And that's been given to players over time by their peers. The NHL players said Nikita Kucherov was the man this year. And that's something. Because it could have just as easily gone to Connor McDavid, because there's a lot of people who would say he is easily the best player in the world. But after last season, Kucherov most certainly should be amongst that elite of elite. It's not as if it was from out of nowhere, but he certainly is reaching a potential that a lot of people were expecting from him. So they got a dynamite team there. And who knows? I mean, with all the Keenan jokes, the Keenan Thompson jokes from the NHL awards, you were bringing that up off camera too, about, they had a record season with 62 wins, and then they had a record playoffs, getting swept and winning no games in the first round. And that did, I think you're right. Again, we talked a lot off camera. We had some internet difficulties because there's a storm here in Toronto now. It happened to Washington, but it wasn't in the first round, I want to say. So they've had their share of disappointments. We talked about the Leafs' disappointments earlier. Sorry, Leaf fans. And the Montreal Canadiens didn't even make the playoffs this year. So, I mean, I'm just permanently disappointed in them because whatever. It's
and then you look
a long road.
at the guys just south of Montreal that actually shocked the hockey world by doing nothing.
But it was an interesting awards. It really was. It was fun to take part, or not take part. Like I was there. No, I wasn't. I used to be there. I used to interview hockey players at the NHL awards, but it was just I don't really see too many surprises. I mean, the people that win statistically, that's an automatic. Ovechkin won the Rocket Richard. He scored the most goals. Kucherov had the most points. He gets the Art Ross. We mentioned earlier the Williams-Jennings Trophy, the lowest goals against average. That went to the Islanders. But what else? The Lady Byng?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
The most gentlemanly player? I mean, Barkov, Alexander Barkov, who is the captain, centerman for the Florida Panthers, one of the more gentlemanly players. He eats up a lot of minutes. And when you do that and you're still going out there and not getting too many penalties, you must be doing something right out there. You must be doing something right out there.
but let's talk about the calendar. Because
The big one, yes. Yes, I'm glad you meant that. There is some controversy there with me, actually, yeah.
Elias Peterson, yes, he had a great season, but he wasn't a power guy for his team.
Well, he was injured for a couple of long stretches. So, in fairness, he was injured. And even Connor McDavid won the Calder on the heels of being injured in his first season, too. So it's not like there isn't any kind of precedent set there. But having said that, Jordan Binnington made history this year. He joined some elite talent. He didn't lose back-to-back games all year. All year. Think about that. Played 29 games. Not bad for a guy who took over, and he wasn't even on the depth chart. He was their fourth string goaltender. 4.
Wow.
4. Okay? 4.
Not first.
Not second. Not even third.
4.
4. Cuatro. Cuatro. That's about as high as I can go in Spanish, sorry. But anyway, Jordan Binnington, to me, that was an upset. And I'm glad you did bring that up because no doubt Elias Pettersson is an elite talent. He even says he doesn't even feel he's a superstar. He's just a kid playing hockey. He's doing what he loves doing. So hats off to him for being humble. But even having said that, Jordan Binnington made historic numbers and achievements in the regular season.
And what you can say about Mark Giordano?
Oh, talk about history.
Mm-hmm.
He joined some really elite talent in terms of being 35 and winning the Norris. He joins these names. Pay very close attention here. Doug Harvey, who is the greatest defenseman ever not named Bobby Orr. Because Bobby Orr you don't even talk about. Like, who's the greatest player of all time? Most people will say Wayne Gretzky. Some people will say Bobby Orr. I say Bobby Orr. That's just, Bobby Orr is just Bobby Orr. He doesn't even enter the discussion. Because he is easily the greatest defenseman that ever lived. There will never be another Bobby Orr. I don't even care what people say about Nicholas Lidstrom, who, yes, is the other guy on that list for winning the Norris, being 35 and over, and Al McInnes, by the way, who did play in Calgary. Mm-hmm. One of the most feared shots in the history of... He played with a wood stick and was clocking speeds that guys have now with those crazy composite sticks.
Wow.
So Al McInnes is a legend. Nicholas Lidstrom, absolutely a legend. And Doug Harvey. And now you add Mark Giordano. Now I'm not going to say Mark Giordano belongs in the conversation with Doug Harvey, Bobby Orr, and Nicholas Lidstrom. But he's had a very strong career in Calgary. He had a bounce back year because he's had some very injury-plagued seasons during his time. So when you combine that and what he was able to accomplish, he had the most points out of any defenseman and just was, not the most points, sorry. I don't think he had the most points, but he had the highest plus-minus. I think he was just a couple of points shy of Brent Burns in the points department. So to see him win was a real accomplishment considering how old he is. Because at 35, believe it or not, if you're unfamiliar again, I'm trying to be friendly to you if you don't know anything about hockey here and you're still tuned in, thank you. I haven't bored you yet, I hope, about all this hockey talk.
We love hockey.
Yes. I just can't take for granted, again, that the people watching love it as much as we might. So,
But you know what? The good thing is that we are starting to teach other people about hockey, which is the best.
And that's why you're bringing me on, I guess.
Yeah. And we are having fun.
Yeah, that's what hockey
making
should
sure
be.
everybody's having fun too.
And we were talking before, in previous times, about, for Toronto people particularly, that there is Hispanic blood within the Leafs. In Matthews,
That's right. I was trying to think. That's right.
Marner actually speaks perfect Spanish.
Probably because he's such good buddies with him. Hey, Mitch Marner's mom goes to the same hairdresser I do. By the way. Thank you, Enzo. Great flow on me. I can't speak to her because I don't really pay attention to Mitch's mom. I'd probably get in a lot of trouble for that if I did. But Enzo, you do a great job on my hair and hers apparently.
Nice.
And you will be surprised with the third one because it's someone that you don't have a
If you say Freddie Anderson, the Danish goaltender, I'm walking out.
no,
If you say Freddie Anderson is half Spanish, I'm gone.
It's even he's not Spanish of the Spanish heritage, but he speaks perfect Spanish, and that's Willie.
Nylander?
You kidding me?
Get out.
He speaks perfect Spanish.
Get out.
He took.
Do me a favor and say this in Spanish to him, so even if he doesn't understand English, put some effort into it, buddy. Here, let's drop that in Spanish just to make sure he understands in English and Spanish. Put some effort into it, pal. Put some effort in. Come on. You signed that big contract, you waited out. Get out.
You say in Spanish, juega better. No, juega mejor.
Yeah, you guys say it. You guys say it.
So let's now.
Wow, so they got the Spanish connection on the first.
Oh, there you go.
So you
I realized there was that much Spanish in the dressing room.
Well, actually, it was funny because I have been discussing with the marketing department at the Leafs, telling them that there has to be a promotion done with the Hispanic community because having that 3 players that speak Spanish. That's one thing. But having a player that actually is of Hispanic descent, like his Matthews is, one of the games that I was coincidentally was awarded a credential for, because it's not often that you get a credential for the Maple Leafs.
That's a tough one. That's a tough egg to crack. I can vouch for that too.
So there were about a group of 20 people that had flown from Mexico just to watch Matthews play, and they had "We are here from your homeland."
Wow.
A little sideboard, and I was like, so I quickly ran to the PR people of the Leafs, and I said, "You see what I've been telling you?"
Well, I mean, it's very interesting that you bring that up because hockey's being broadcast in a lot of different languages now. Most notably on the CBC, they have an entirely separate feed in broadcasting in Punjabi, right?
Yeah,
so
it's true.
when you think about that,
But
and
thanks to Kadri, huh?
yes, I would say there's a part of that too. But there's a large enough Punjabi contingent, obviously, for the CBC of all things to invest in that is a big deal. And considering that Toronto is easily the most multicultural on the continent, I'd venture to say,
Yep.
is a big deal unto itself there too. And to sit here and say we want to grow the game, and I put this out there almost seriously because hockey's suffering in Canada, and it's a very, very expensive sport to play, not just from the equipment, but the registration. It's a very expensive sport, right? There's a reason basketball and football are the most popular. It's because all you need is a ball.
And it's also one of the most time invested games that you can have. I mean, it's
And if you want to
a
grow
lot
the
of
game,
hours.
yeah, and if you want to grow the game, and as you're saying, there's a contingent, and you have arguably the best Toronto Maple Leaf they've had in years. Arguably, because Mitch Marner and John Tavares are right up there with him. And then again, you can have the tag team of Marner speaking perfect Spanish, and Matthews speaking perfect Spanish, all the while
Mitch.
chirping Nylander. The chirping, by the way, if you don't know, I'm going to say that a lot on the Hockey Report when it debuts here on Frequency5FM.com in September. You're going to hear the word chirp, and that means you're giving the guy the gears, you're talking to him, you're giving. Basically, it's a nice way of making fun. I don't want to swear, but chirps, it's like you'd say to the
Okay,
ref,
give me an example.
hey, oh God. Where do I get a good one? People love chirping the refs. Well, a lot of it. Well, here's my favorite chirp. Okay, this is my favorite chirp as a goaltender. When people mouth off to me at the end after we've even won a game, I'll say, "Hey, buddy, look at that scoreboard. Look at the scoreboard over there." That's my favorite chirp because you don't even have to swear. They're all mad at you. You won the game, and you're like, "See the scoreboard? Yeah, okay. Bye-bye." Right? You just signal it to them, "The scoreboard," and then they get really mad and drop f-bombs, and you go, "Look at the scoreboard." I mean, look, we're trying to have a family-friendly show here, so the chirps NHL players give are rather creative.
How about the part where the goalies start fighting?
That's pretty rare.
You as a hockey player and a goalie, how do you actually fight with all the equipment?
It's funny. That's a good question. I mean, personally, I've never gotten into a fight as a goaltender. I've never played professional hockey as a goaltender.
And you see how they
they
spend like 5 minutes taking out the gloves.
Well,
and
they go.
everything.
Here's another term. They go yard sale with the gloves, right? They throw the gloves off, so that's called yard sale. They take the helmet and they toss that. But there's some. If you want to look online, there's a real famous one that involves, and this is quite a few years ago. But you're going to love this because it involves a Toronto Maple Leaf goaltender by the name of Felix Potvin. Felix Potvin was not a big goaltender. Not a big goaltender at all. And they were playing the Philadelphia Flyers. And it was Ron Hextall in net, who is considered the baddest son of a bitch in the history of goaltending.
Wow.
And they go at it. They go at it. And they're just dropping. Felix Potvin won the fight.
You're kidding me.
No.
How
Felix
that
Potvin,
happened?
because you never underestimate anyone like that. So Felix Potvin beating up on Ron Hextall. You can go look it up on YouTube. You see it there.
Well, you mean
There's
the
blood all over.
ex-manager from the Philadelphia?
Yeah, no, Ron
Wow.
Hextall. I looked up to Ron Hextall when I was younger. Oh man, we can talk. He could have had a career as a lumberjack with all the guys that he would slash. It was incredible with Ron Hextall. But I mean, I looked up to him in a way. Maybe not the smartest way when I was younger. I don't play like that anymore. But I will say, to this day, whenever you're watching a game and you see a goaltender tapping his post with his stick, that's where you're trying to feel your net, right? You want to know the feeling of your net. So I always tap my posts the exact same way. I've done it the same way for more than 20 years now, and it's because of Ron Hextall. So he's been an idol to me in a little different way, but not in the way of dropping the gloves. I don't. Fighting is a big deal in hockey to a lot of people, but not me. And I think we can talk about that, especially in other times.
Goaltending has changed a lot in the last 20 years because they were more aggressive. They were more. I mean, the goaltenders these days are not as aggressive as they used to be.
Well, they had to be because the game has changed a lot. And again, you know, we can talk a lot about this, but the way that we used to score goals, you can even look at Wayne Gretzky. He was scoring goals from near the blue line along the ice because a lot of goalies still in the 80s didn't use the butterfly.
Yep.
And keep in mind, and here's a great history lesson for you. This is very important. The butterfly is not new. The butterfly's been around since the 1950s. A goalie by the name of Glenn Hall, who is one of the greatest goaltenders of all time. His nickname is Mr. Goalie. Mr. Goalie. He holds a record that will never be broken of consecutive starts. He's got over, is it 500? I don't know the number specifically because I'm terrible at math and numbers, but he started over 500 consecutive games. And he basically created the butterfly technique. And of course, it's been modernized through players like Tony Esposito, another great goaltender from the Chicago Blackhawks. And then, without question, the most influential butterfly goaltending of the modern era comes from Patrick Waugh. So right along there. But the way the game is played, it's not just an easy slap shot along the ice and you have to come out, cut off your angles aggressively. There's a lot more efficient passing. In the NHL back in the 80s and even as late as the 90s, it was a north-south game, right? Along the ice a lot, run the puck, north-south, dump, chase, done. But with a lot of European talent and a bit more dynamic coaching, the game isn't just north-south. It's a lot of east-west. There's a lot of plays that are designed for what's called the back door, right? A goaltender stick towards the back side of the net, right near the posts. So when you get a pass like that and you're looking to make that save, man, that's hard to get to if you're right near the face-off dots.
Yep.
So the game has changed, and as a necessity, yes, goalies should come out and cut off angles. I'm not saying you sit at the back of your net, but from an angle standpoint, from cutting off your angles, you can't be nearly as aggressive anymore.
But even now, goalies, I don't know if you remember before, like long time, before goalies, they used to ice time.
So ice time?
Yeah,
So,
like
what?
they used to get a pack and they didn't move.
Oh, playing the puck.
Yeah.
Playing the puck.
Now, you see them going more to the front, making passes.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that because, again, there were goalies that would play the puck, but the goalie that changed the game forever...
Like Healy.
No, Ron Hextall.
Oh.
Ron Hextall is the first goaltender in NHL history to actually shoot a puck and score.
Wow.
Billy Smith was the first NHL goaltender, New York goaltender. He was the last player on his team to touch a puck, but the net was empty down in the other end, and the other team, I forget who it is off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I know I'm the expert here, but they touched the puck and dumped it back into their own net,
Wow.
and Billy Smith ended up getting credited. But then the evolution from Ron Hextall was Martin Brodeur. Martin Brodeur literally changed everything. Not only did he score goals, but you couldn't dump a puck. He was the third defenseman.
Yep.
And he would clear that zone with ease. It was flawless. It was gorgeous. Now, while yes, he did make some mistakes doing it, most notably against the Anaheim Ducks during the Stanley Cup playoffs. However, the NHL, and this is a rule that to this day, I don't understand why it exists. When you look at the ice, you see those lines behind the net.
Mhm.
It's the trapezoid.
Yep.
you're not allowed to go outside that trapezoid anymore to play the puck. But there's the NHL saying we need more offense, and then you're punishing a goaltender with a tool that generates more of that offense.
Wow.
So it's a great skill to have. It's something that I know I teach because I have to. Right? It's a skill that goalies need. And I try my best when I'm teaching them. As young as 7 years old, I'm just trying to get them to feel how it is to play the puck. You want them to have that skill. So as they get older, play at higher levels, it's not like, oh, they're 13 and, oh, I don't know how to play the puck. So you got to give that skill set to the kids now too.
And now that you're here, you as a goalie coach, when you actually can tell your students, sometimes you see the students and sometimes you just see that it's not improvement. Is any time you ended up telling them, you know what, I guess hockey's not for you? Do you ever tell them?
I would never in a million years say that.
Yeah.
Being a goaltender, first of all, math is not our friend. There are 62 jobs in any given year in the National Hockey League. That's the way I always say this. And half of them are starting goaltenders. You're not going to take their job. And then there's the backup goaltender. You're probably not going to take their job either. So in any given year in the National Hockey League, there's maybe about 15 jobs open. And you got to think to yourself, well, there's already goalies that were drafted by these teams to be brought in. So, you know, there's a world of possibilities out there. But the thing is, it doesn't matter if you play house league or junior A hockey. If you love it, play it.
Play it.
Don't quit. Now, if you're afraid of the puck, and believe it or not, I've had people ask this.
Yeah, that's the best part.
I love it. I love it. I eat it up. I haven't been afraid of a shot since I was 12 years old. And Josh Stein, I was like, I can't even give you a height reference here, but he was already 6 feet tall. So Josh, if you're catching wind of this here, bud, you're the last player to scare me. And I've been in front of some pucks from some NHL guys at practice. I'm not saying I'm an NHL goaltender. Let's get this out of the way here. I've been invited to practice with NHL players to be in the net, and they've shot their hardest. I don't get scared of pucks.
Wow.
But what I do say to parents who do ask, or on message boards online, they'll say, oh, my son, he doesn't want to go to practice. He's scared of the puck. He's moving away from the puck. And I say, well, then your son's not a goalie.
Yeah.
Or your daughter. Like, be a defenseman, be a center, be a right winger, left winger. It doesn't matter. If you love the game, keep playing the game. But a goalie's job is to stand in front of that thing. So if you're afraid of it, it may not be the best position for you.
Just before we leave, because we are almost at that time of the day.
Yeah, we're getting the wrap-up signal. I see our lovely producer saying, okay, wrap it up, guys. Come on.
Let's get just back to 2 awards, which we haven't discussed.
Bang them out real quick.
So, we are talking about the Ray Clancy Award.
Oh, the King Clancy Award.
The King Clancy Award. And we are talking also about the Mark Messier Award.
We're not going to talk about the Mark Messier Award. And it's no disrespect to Wayne Simmons, who arguably deserved it. A lot of people said that Justin Williams, the captain of the Carolina Hurricanes, who helped with that big celebration, the storm surge that everybody hated, or no, everybody loved except Don Cherry, sorry. Don Cherry, bunch of jerks, I tell you, that celebration, you shouldn't be doing that, kids. Don, with all due respect, you're well into your 80s now, bud. Kids, celly well. Be respectful, right? Be respectful. Celly well. That's short for celebration, by the way. And, I don't want to talk too much about Mark Messier. There's reasons why. That's a greater discussion, but congratulations to Wayne Simmons for his leadership, both on and off the ice. I think it's worth noting that over the last couple of years, he's faced blatant racism. Blatant racism. He's one of a handful of black hockey players in the National Hockey League, and in this day and age, I find it appalling that we see that. But on the flip side, there is an award, the Willie O'Ree Award, the first black hockey player in the NHL that they award, and the name escapes me because I can't remember who won everything. I'm sure if we pulled it up, I could see it. But, hockey coach, rightfully won, and he was also African American. So it's nice to see that the sport is starting to grow in that community, because it's not necessarily very popular. It is, again, very expensive, but to see that you have a guy like Simmons setting an example like that is very valuable. Talking about Mark Messier as a whole, again, we can have a whole show on that and I have my opinions, but that's more for the hockey report. That's more for the hockey report when it debuts here, again, on Frequency5FM.com, part of the Barn Burner Radio Network.
Perfect. So don't forget
Wait,
to...
we are missing the King Clancy award.
Well, the King Clancy award, yeah, that's one of those awards that kind of gets... So, again, that's one of those that get given to a player. Jason Zucker, yes. Henrik Lundqvist, I'm just reading it right now, and it's in Spanish, so I really, yeah. You know, it's an award. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I'm not overly familiar with the Clancy. I know who the man is. I know who King Clancy is. I think it has something to do with dedication. And humanitarian efforts.
Leadership.
So there you go, humanitarian leadership. So we got a lot of those awards. We've got the Masterton for coming back from adversity. We've got Mark Messier for leadership, and the Clancy for a degree of leadership. Oh, no. Jason Zucker, though, is a good dude. I do know that. Jason Zucker giving to the community and winning that award is a big deal. But yeah, I can't. Thank you for you. See, you even taught me a little something, because that was one of those awards like, oh, he got it. Okay.
And the best part, you ended up reading on in Spanish.
Oh yeah, no, there you go. Maybe it's the French that I was able to translate it up. So there, you caught me on something I'm not a complete expert on, but I'm not unwilling to say that, because as much as I do know about hockey, let's face it, there are a lot of people out there who do too, and I always appreciate learning from them. And guys, during your Spanish language time, you had an entire episode about hockey with a guy who knows English and French. I am not Mitch Marner. I am not William Nylander, who is Swedish, who knows Spanish. And of course, yes, how I brain farted on Austin Matthews having some Spanish lineage in him. I feel shame. I go to the box for 2 minutes. We were saying Slapshot, the greatest hockey movie of all time. You'll understand that reference. I go to the box for 2 minutes. I feel shame. And then I come out, and anyways, I can go on and on about Slapshot.
So one more time, it's time to wrap up. Please tell everybody that you are coming back on September, to make sure, please stay tuned in. One more time.
Absolutely. I'm really, really excited. If you haven't heard by now, Frequency5FM.com is partnered up with the Barn Burner Radio Network. We're going to be providing a lot of the English language content here on your channel, and my show is going to be the Hockey Report. We are going to be setting up the time, as far as I know, 9 p.m. Russ, don't be eating dinner this time. We'll get the schedule right. Russ Cohen, one of the great hockey minds of sportsology. Anyone I know about the draft and the young players.
Perfect. Eduardo.
Well, thank you very much for listening to us, watching on Facebook Live, because we are giving a new direction to Frecuencia Deportiva. We are trying to bring you and intrigue you with English language sports, and
to make it in Spanglish.
To make it a Spanglish sports world.
No royalties to Adam Sandler for that. None. Nada, right?
But
Nada.
Just remember that every Thursday we'll be here from 6 to 7:30. And we are going to give you a spin around, because we are going to have fantastic guests from the media world and from the sports world. Hopefully we will be having some of the players come around now that the seasons are finished for both the Raptors and the Leafs. So watch out for that. Remember, La Portada Canada is there to serve you. Read all our news, sporting news, at laportadacanada.com.
Perfect. Mi gente linda, ya para terminar, no se olviden que este programa vino auspiciado por Central Tech. No se olviden, Central Tech is located at 1104 Wilson Avenue, y el teléfono 647-385-4797. Everybody, thank you for tuning in today, and we have a great time, everybody. So long, everyone.